Processing your year-end in the Clarity application can be done in a 10 to 15 minute window. This training is going to take you through the year-end process, as well as the renewal and downloading of the installation of updates. We start off with the renewal of the software. Before you process the year-end, you should have your software renewed, downloaded, and installed. To renew your software, simply go to the Paymate Software website at paymatesoftware.com and log in by clicking the login icon in the top right corner. This will provide you a prompt to key in a username, customer ID or customer name, and password. This customer ID is a 6-digit numeric code that commences with either a 13 or a 12. This customer ID and code, as well as the password, will be emailed to you by Paymate to let you know what they are, especially at the time of the renewal and the updates are available. Once you've logged into your account, you will see a list of your account profile information, such as your primary contact, phone number, and email address. It is important that if this information is out of date, that you update it at this time on this screen. The email address here especially will be the email address that your invoice will be emailed, or the copy of your invoice will be emailed upon the completion of the renewal process. To renew the software, we simply click Renew next to the product that we want to renew. This will bring you to a small and easy questionnaire, in which case you'll first be asked how many employees you process payroll for. This is not how many employees you process payroll for at one time. It's how many employees do you process payroll amongst all companies in your environment. So if you have 4 companies and you're processing payroll for 25 employees in each of those companies, your range should be the 51 to 100 marker. If you only have one company with 25 employees, then you would say 1 to 50. You would also specify the accounting software that you most often focus on or deal with. This helps us to communicate with you those particular features or functions and enhancements that pertain to the accounting software that you deal with, and send you very specific information about what you need. The consultant or reseller of your accounting software helps us build relationships with your organization and build stronger communications with the accounting package you have. Notifying us how many companies you do payroll for allows us to also understand how you're utilizing the system, and allows again to provide you features in the application geared towards your particular functionality and usage. A few additional questions, such as do you know about our time clock features, the ability of having HR, time and attendance, and employee self-service features, and our different programs are also available, and you would answer each one of these respectively. Once you have completed the questionnaire and clicked on Continue, the system will provide you with your account information. Here it will show your customer contact information, including your customer ID, username. It will tell you what modules that you have for your system, the subtotal, taxes, and total cost. If you want to send in a check, you can click on the download order form and complete that at this time, filling out the information from this screen. Otherwise, to process online, we would click Continue or Renew. This then gives us a confirmation of what we just saw. So once again, just confirming the details. And once again, we would click on Continue to move to the next screen. This will take us to the bank processing page, in which case you can enter your credit card number, name, and expiry date. At this point in time, if you had a pop-up blocker, the chances are that this screen might have been blocked, and you might have a warning message at the top of the screen saying to allow this application or pop-up to occur. You should do this, as this is what is trying to open, is the actual credit card processing screen. Once we've entered the information, the system would then take us to the process order screen back in the payment website, in which case you would tell you whether you were successfully completed or canceled the order. Once we have renewed the software, then we can proceed to download the application. To download the application, you click on the download link, which will immediately bring you to the download screen. Here, you'll see that there are two sections, current and past downloads. You should be focusing on the current download section and finding the Clarity software, and I'll say either Canadian or US respectively, and it will say 2013 once you have renewed. As you are renewing the software and installing software updates, this is all that you need. You do not need the SQL Server Express Edition installations, and you do not need the time and attendance or employee self-service installations. You would simply need the Clarity software installation. For those of you that are upgrading from PayMate Platinum to Clarity, you will see Clarity listed here as well in place of what you used to have as Platinum. So we simply click down the link to download. Again, the system is just giving you a confirmation saying SQL Server 2005 must be installed. You can just click OK to that, as if you're using it today. It is installed. You'll then get a pop-up dialog or a message pop-up saying, this wants to happen. So you should say save, and it's always recommended that you choose the save as option. This way you have control over where the file is going to be saved. When saving it, it is recommended that you record it to a location where the installation file does not currently exist and you know how to access it. Dropping some files on your desktop are always a handy idea because they're easy to find later. At this point in time, there are the written documents you would have. You should record the location and file name of the download. Now that we have downloaded the updates for the software, we will then proceed into the Clarity application and log in to our company, which I have already done. Once we've logged into the application, we would proceed to the help menu and go to license file location. This is telling us where the license file is on our local machine, or where our program is using the license file from. You would want to record this down on your documents or on a sheet of paper so that after the installation of the software, you can ensure that the license file location stays the same. This is extremely important for the system to function properly. Once you have that location written, you can go to the Utilities menu and you can perform a backup. This is not a required step, although highly recommended. To create your backup, you would simply click on that backup button, which will load the backup dialog. If you're on your local machine for your database, the system will ask you where you want the backup file to go and a name. If you're remote to your server, you are simply going to be asked for a name. If asked for both pieces of information, please record the backup folder location at this time and record the name of the file in both situations. If you have multiple companies, proceed to do the backup for every company. At this point in time, you would close the application, run the installation application twice. The first time you would run the application, the system would ask you the options to modify, update, or remove the product. You should select the option to remove the software. This will not affect your data. It will simply remove the files of the application itself. After you have uninstalled the software, you would run the installation program again to install the application. This time installing it to the default locations. This will install the software updates for the program. Once the program updates are installed and you start the application, you can now proceed to your end process. To do so, we check a few things first. First is under Setup, our payroll settings and payroll groups. The first thing that we want to check is that for any biweekly or weekly payrolls in our organization, that we have utilized all the necessary payrolls encompassed within them. This is easily done by opening up that payroll cycle, scrolling to the end, and seeing if we have processed payroll for that final pay period in the year. In this case, my hourly payroll, being a bi-weekly payroll period, has a pay period that goes from December 15th to 28th and paid on the 21st, so I'm paying it ahead of time. I have not yet processed payroll for that pay period. This means either that the payroll is unposted and I need to go in and post that payroll to commit it to memory, or that payroll actually was part of next year's cycle. In this case, being the 21st, it would not be. If I paid my payroll, however, the following Friday, which is common in a bi-weekly cycle where the payroll ends and is paid the following week, then that 27th payroll never would have been processed, as it would have belonged as my first payroll for 2013. So what you're checking here is that if you have 26 payrolls or 27 payrolls, if you have one too many, then you should be changing your payroll frequency from 27 back to 26, removing that additional payroll period you do not need. Once we have made the necessary updates to our payroll periods, we then confirm that our payroll is indeed posted for all payroll groups. We do this simply by going to select pay period, and we can see all the individual payroll groups, and if we see that there is an X through one of those payroll groups, we can select it, see that the pay period that is for, and we can see what exactly is in the system for processing. Keep in mind that the processed transactions may be job cost records for those that are doing job or labor distribution. If these exist, it may be that you have not processed the payroll for them yet, or that they were accidentally brought forward early. So we can just delete those if not appropriate. We can also go to process pay cards and edit pay cards and see if there's anybody with a payroll transaction currently existing. Once again, keeping in mind that if a record exists, it either was one that you were using for testing purposes or trial, or was a live transaction that needs to be posted, so act upon it appropriately. If the record has zeros in it on this screen, that is an existing record, so it means that the record needs to be deleted or posted. Okay, so blank means that it does not exist. If it's not blank, if it has zeros, the record does exist, it has no value. That's very different. So we make sure there's no unposted payrolls. Once we have completed that process, now we can simply go to the year-end menu and run the option to close year. This is a wizard process, and pretty much you follow through each of the steps one by one automatically. So we click next. If you've already closed your year-end before, maybe in a test, you would type the words close again to reclose the current payroll year and open the following year's balances. Payroll categories that have a reset value or reset balance trigger, the system will ask you, do you want to reset those categories to a zero balance? Most likely these are all to be no, so you would leave them checked. The system would then show you any payroll tax categories that are percentage oriented in the system and ask you the new minimums, maximums, or percentage values for them respectively. If you do not know them at this time, that is fine. You can leave them as they are and update them after the fact. But if you know your new workers' comp rates, or you know your new fixed tax percentage rates, or you know your new EHT, you can change them at this point. Once again, if you've already closed your year, the system's going to provide you a prompt to say overwrite the following year's payroll. So this is just overriding what's already been closed. The next step for everybody will be the option of skipping your backup. If you made a backup before we started this process, you can choose to skip it at this time. If you did not make a backup, then you should not check this box. So during the backup, the year-end process, it does prompt you to make a backup, but as I said earlier, I've already asked you to make a backup before we started this, so if you did that, you can ignore this step. Carry over inactive payroll categories alludes to those payroll categories on an employee's master pay card. which have been disabled or deactivated but not removed. If you want those categories to be maintained on the employee's master pay card for the following year, you would check this box. If you don't know for sure whether you do or not, check the box. You will then be asked to type in the word close 2012, which you type in diligently, and you click on process, and the system is now closing your 2012 year. If there are any exceptions in the system, so for example here it's seeing that there was a payroll category that was defined with the company profile definition and a maximum, and the old value is 500 and the new value is 0. So it's saying that the employee had $500 here and now you've set it to 0. So it's showing you any exceptions that there may be, and the system now tells you that your system's ready to go for 2013. An important thing to note is that simply because you've ran the year-end close for 2012 does not mean you cannot access the company again. You can log into the company as many times as you want. On that company select screen, we change the year to 2013, and now we can log into our 2013 calendar year. The very first thing that we should do before processing any payroll for 2013 is once again checking our payroll group settings for those weekly or bi-weekly payrolls, and while we're checking them, ensuring that if we can scroll to the bottom of the list and just look at the last payroll period of the year. And imagine what would happen is if you added one more payroll to the year. Well, we don't have to imagine. We can just change it to 27 payrolls. And then we can look at the pay date of the last pay period of the year for that last pay period. If this pay date lands on the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd of January, you want to pay very close attention to what day it is. In this case, it being a Friday. Why do you want to pay close attention to it? The reason is that if your payroll was paid on a Saturday, Sunday, or a Monday, a very common action is that companies will pay that before that long weekend. So people have their money before the New Year's Eve long weekend. If you were to move that payment ahead so that it ended up on the 31st or 30th of December and no longer was part of January, that would make that a 27th payroll for that 2013 payroll year. If you maintained the date as it was, or you changed the date but the date still landed in the January month, then that would be the first payroll of the following year, and you knew that you would not need a 27 or a 53 payroll cycle, in which case you would either leave it at 26 or 52 payrolls, or you would change it from 27 to 26 or from 53 to 52 if you were previously on a 27 and 53 payroll year. Mathematically, it should be impossible to have two 27 payroll years in a row or two 53 payroll years in a row. Mathematically impossible. To process your taxes and to process your tax forms, you can do these immediately or maybe a couple of weeks down the road or maybe the end of January. They do not have to be done right away. But what you do is when you want to process those tax reports, you would select your company and change the date of year back to 2012. With that done, we can then go to the Forms menu, select the tax report that we want to produce, and choose the option to create. Here you will be asked for what EI group or business number. So if you have multiple, you would have to process this multiple times. We enter the submission number. So how many times have we submitted this year's taxes to the government? In this case, is our first time. And we can click next. The system will then show you your payroll categories and what box assignments they shall report to. And then we can click on finish. This will go through every single employee, producing the T4s for every single employee within the organization. Upon completion, you would then be able to proceed to the T4 menu, and you can go to Edit Supplementaries. These are the employee personal copies of T4s, in which case you can modify, change, update the T4 information for the employee as an individual, where and if necessary. As an example, if you have pension contributions that were calculated outside of the system, or if you're a union organization that had union dues that were provided to you after the T4s or payroll was completed, you can make the appropriate adjustments to the boxes as necessary. If you have to make no changes to the employee records, then you would skip that and you can go straight to Edit Summary. In here, you would select your business number that you need to record for. And under Tax Information Part 1, record what you have actually paid in taxes. This value would retrieve from your accounting system on how much money you've actually paid in remittances to your taxes. Not all companies pay their taxes up to date, and some you might be short on your payments for one reason or another. So you're going in here and recording what you've actually paid, and the system will tell you if you've overpaid it or underpaid it and how much is due or a refund is due if where appropriate. Once you've keyed in how much money you have paid in regards to taxes, you can then proceed to the print menu. Again, where you can choose the business number, submission number. You can choose to print the employee copies, and then what copy of form, the government copy, the employer copy, the employee copy, or instructions. So you can say which version of the form you want to print. You can also choose to print the summary. So that's the employer portion of the T4 summary. And you can print audit reports to find out if they're the auditing of the employee's figures, discrepancies between what the employee paid in taxes and what their insurable wages were, or employees with bad social insurance numbers, numbers that don't pass the validation policy for social insurance numbers. When you print the reports, on the paper tab you can choose to use the pre-printed government forms or blank paper. It is highly recommended that you use blank paper, especially since the government no longer ships forms to users, and they just ask you to log into the website and download and print the copy for yourself. Well, if you're doing that, don't bother. Use the program and use the custom laser forms where the software will print the image of the form for you. This will save you significant amounts of time in worrying about alignments and making the values and the numbers line up to the boxes in the form, especially when printing the forms off the government website. Have a very common problem of resizing the image of the form so it matches your paper and puts margins on it. But what ends up happening is that the form you print from the government website is not the natural size. So if you're printing it from the government website, don't bother. Use the Clarity program and use the custom laser forms option to print the image of the form and the data. Just so you can see an example, there's what your custom laser forms look like, so you can see the image and data are all produced. These instructions can be followed also for the Releve 1s and T4A processings. Again, the key point is to make sure you log into the 2012 calendar year to produce those reports in the system, and then you would log back into 2013 to process your payroll regularly. That's it for the year-end processing and training of the application. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to everybody involved.